Next Sunday, we'll conclude the series of sermons titled Back to School. We're going to deal with bullies wherever they might be found. But today we're going to, and I should add that if you've missed any in the series, we have 4 other ones that have been preached. You might want to check them out online. Hopefully you'll see the sequence that we're following. Today we're going to talk about expanding our circle of friends in an unusual way. The text is going to be the call of Moses. And just before you hear how Moses responded to God, remember that God has appeared to Moses in a burning bush, and God has said, "Hey, Moses, go down, tell Pharaoh, let my people go." Listen now to Moses' bold, brave response.
But Moses said to God, "If I come to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am." He said further, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" Then Moses answered, "But suppose they do not believe me or listen to me, but say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.'" The Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" He said, "A staff." And he said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw the staff on the ground, and it became a snake, and Moses drew back from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Reach out your hand and seize it by the tail." So he reached out his hand and grasped it, and it became a staff in his hand, so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. But Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now that you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who gives speech to mortals? Who makes them mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to speak." But he said, "O my Lord, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "What of your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he can speak fluently. Even now he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, his heart will be glad." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
I have not made a scientific study of this, but I do think that it's somewhere around mid-high or junior high that people, students, young people start dividing folks up into cliques, us and them. Us could be the athletic ones, or the social ones, or the, let's say, the rebels, the goths. They could be the music people. They could be the drama people. We just divide them all up. And we become people identified by our group. And other people become identified by our assumptions about them. We go to high school, and those assumptions, those stereotypes, the cliquishness continues. And until our grave, the cliquishness continues, because that's just the way we are. For whatever reason, wrapped up in our DNA, is it original sin? I don't know. It is simply the fact that we want to identify ourselves with a group, and we limit others by our identifications of them accordingly to their groups. And I want to say right up front that I, your pastor, am just as guilty as anybody else. The passage that you heard today is a prime example of my sinfulness. Because, you see, I had always assumed that I knew Moses pretty well. And whenever I heard his response, and whenever I would read over the years his response from Exodus about God's overture, to Moses to become the founder of Israel, the leaders of an oppressed Hebrew people, lead them into freedom and become a light to the world, and his name would be the George Washington and the Abraham Lincoln of Israel. When presented with this opportunity, I always thought that Moses was the quintessential wimp. Namby-pamby. I mean, think of that. Moses, go down, tell my people, or tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And his response is, well, who should I say is sending me? Tell him Yahweh. That's a good name. That's who I am. I am who I am, Yahweh. But what if they don't believe that you really sent me? Well, here's a good miracle. Take the stick, it becomes snake. Come on, you can do that. I don't really speak too well. Who cares? Aaron speaks. I'll help. Oh, send someone else. Doesn't he just want you to kick some sand in his face like on the beach? You know what I mean? That was my impression of Moses until he got some bravery in him and went off and became who we know him to be. But I read a book once, thanks to Nancy Dunlap, our former associate pastor when she was a district superintendent. She made us read a book, and I'm pointing to you, Nancy Dunlap, by Eric Law called The Wolf Shall Dwell with the Lamb. And Professor Law gave an understanding of Moses and other people and stories in the Bible from a cultural perspective. And it changed totally the way I saw Moses. Dr. Law said that you have to remember that Moses came from a slave mentality. He identified totally with an oppressed people. And so when he was presented an opportunity to be the revolutionary, he shrank from it. No, I can't do that, because he was so accustomed identifying with his people of face to the ground, just obeying orders. Totally weak, totally powerless. God, even though he was angry at the end of the passage, ultimately shows patience, shows Moses his faithfulness, and by that, Moses' character was able to flower and he became the leader, the revolutionary for his people. The bottom line is, I was wrong. And if I was wrong about Moses, I could be wrong about a lot of people. I could be wrong about that African-American young man who grew up in the government housing, assisted housing over in 14th and Park. I could make assumptions about him, and I'd be oblivious to the fact that his background was one of being raised in poverty and in a school system that's unaccredited with gangs all around. I might be wrong about him. Or I might be wrong about that Bosnian couple that comes here to ESL, refugees from their own country because of the conflict between Serbians and Croatians. And I might wonder about why are they so quiet and withdrawn and suspicious of the government? Because I wouldn't know their background. I just see them coming during Monday through Friday. Or I might be totally wrong about those 4 Mexican workers that I see in Hispanic workers, I don't even know if they're Mexico, in Jack in the Box, having a lunch break. I would never know their background, never know perhaps they're migrants, maybe some without green cards, trying to send money back to an impoverished family. I wouldn't know. But I could sure make my assumptions just looking at them and then not talking and moving on with my fries and Big Jack, Yeah, I could be wrong about Moses. I could be wrong about a lot of people because we are so quick to make those judgments. The distinct Christian spirit, the Christian mandate is to be able to stop and never put a person in a clique, in a group, but always understand that there is a story and there are feelings behind that person that we too often cut off because of our assumptions, our stereotypes. If there's any mandate that we have as Americans, I would add, it is to be able to know that our diversity is a strength and not a weakness. Contrary to what you might hear on the radio. The National Research Council has estimated that the United States population will increase by 50% in the next 50 years. More than 2/3 of that increase will come from immigrants, their children, and their grandchildren. Because of the impact of immigration, Hispanics will soon outnumber African Americans, and the Asian American population is expected to nearly triple by 2050 to 8% of the total population. Now, how do you feel when you hear those statistics? How do you feel when you have several different languages to go through before you get to English on a box of Tide? You know what I mean? I hope you feel good, because if we as a country are to be strong, then it's because we can identify truly as the melting pot, not with strata, but all mixed together so that we can understand oppression, so we can understand liberation, so we can understand what it really feels like to be people with different colors of skin, different languages, different accents. That will give us strength as a national identity. That will give us strength as our identity in the world. But for you and me, it will give us an identity as Christians, because that is what we are called to do by the same Christ who came to destroy human barriers. And he embodied that. It got him crucified, but it also got him resurrected by the God who called Moses and the God who calls you and me to break down those walls. Professor Law goes on in his book to tell of a very interesting experiment that a church ran, a multicultural experiment. One afternoon, they had a large group of multicultural folks. They split them up into diverse small groups. After some introductions, the Caucasians, the whites in the group, each group, started dominating the conversation, giving their opinions, asking questions, and so forth. The people of color sort of shrank back into the background. Afterwards, people sifted over into their own respective cultural groups, the whites in theirs and the people of color in theirs. And the whites said it was so frustrating to be with them because they wouldn't say anything. So of course we had to fill the void and share what was on our minds. The people of color, on the other hand, said they were so loud that we grew up where the women and children were not really to voice their opinions, and the men were to show respect by being reserved and quiet. Well, both groups got together and they shared their feelings and thoughts, and it was revolutionary. They then broke back up into smaller multicultural groups, and the whites intentionally gave them what I think Professor Law called inviting silence. And the people of color were encouraged to take chances and share their feelings. And in that hallowed afternoon, cultural differences melted away, and communication and relationships grew. Now that was a set environment. Blessed are you and I if we were ever able to do that in an environment in which we take a chance. And we sit by that person sitting alone in a school cafeteria, or in the office break room, or even in a restaurant who serves us, or whom we serve. Do you get the idea? To be able in some fashion, in an authentic way for you, to begin to get into a dialogue with someone different from yourself so that you can see life differently and maybe ultimately see Christ differently. Fear holds us back, but fear is only an opportunity to form relationships called authentic, called Christian. And I think the music makers earlier this year did a great job of letting us know what it really is like to treat all people of all backgrounds with equal respect. And so instead of me giving a conclusion to this sermon, why not have people who look and sound a lot better than me give this conclusion? They concluded their musical earlier this year with this song. I invite you to listen to it, be inspired by it, and I dare you not to keep humming it for the rest of the afternoon. Current and past music makers.
All the nations picnic of the world. There's Holland and there's Poland and there's Iceland and there's Thailand. There's England and there's Scotland and America, that's my land. There's Canada and Panama and Sweden and Aruba, Korea, Tanzania, not to mention Greece and Cuba. Mali, Bali, Mexico and Martinique, Hungary, Turkey, India and Mozambique, Haiti, Fiji, Israel and Senegal, Kenya, Ghana, Jordan and Nepal, all sitting on the same big blanket with the same big basket full of sandwiches and deviled eggs. We're all drinking from the same big thermos at the same big picnic. It's the picnic of the world. Picnic of the picnic of the picnic of the world. There's Pakistan, Afghanistan, Malaysia and Nigeria. There's Luxembourg and Liechtenstein, let's not forget Liberia. There's Paraguay and Uruguay, there's Russia and there's Syria, Sudan, Japan, Iraq, Iran, and what about Algeria? Finland, Greenland, Switzerland and Vietnam, Denmark, Norway, Swaziland and Suriname, Chile, China, Guatemala, Trinidad, Togo, Portugal and Chad, all sitting on the same big blanket with the same warm soda as the ants crawl on our sandwiches. We're all swatting at the same mosquitoes, eating burned up burgers at the picnic of the world. Picnic of the picnic of the picnic of the world. There's Gambia and Zambia and Laos and Guyana. There's Libya, Namibia, Andorra and Botswana. There's Singapore and Ecuador, El Salvador and Lebanon, Albania, Romania, Sri Lanka and Bhutan, all sitting on the same big blanket with the same big basket full of problems and annoyances. We're all knowing, and the deep down heart of it, we're all a part of it. The picnic of the picnic of the picnic of the world. It's a picnic of the world, the world, the world, the world.